Hello, yeah, it's Ross here from Britain's Hidden History. Normally we don't do any campaigning or political stuff on this channel, but this is really serious. Anyone with interest, particularly in history, is a threat to the National Library of Wales. We're talking here about the intellectual and cultural treasure of the country. It's already been badly treated over hundreds of years, which is what the Britain's Hidden History project's all about. Finding all that history which has long been destroyed or hidden or inaccessible. And now we got to the stage where the Welsh National Library itself is through a series of funding cuts. It's not part of the political thing. If you look at the Senedd, you'll find there's Plaid, Labour, Tories. They're all the same on this one, okay? So don't let that confuse you. And also, I'll just go through with some of the things that are actually being reported. So if you look here, this was the South Wales Argos. By the way, Andrew Whelan brought my attention to this, thank you. But this is South Wales Argos. This was back in November. And they say the Wales National Library needs 1.5 million for pay and pensions. And you can read this article. I'll put the link down in the notes below. The emphasis here is all about losing these jobs, which is tragic, and the fact that the funding in real terms, and is David Ellis-Thomas, the great Welsh campaigner. He's been actual Deputy Minister for Cultural, Sports and Tourism. He denies there's been any cuts, but if you read the wording, it's got the usual politicians' weasel words. There's been cuts in real terms, but the baselines stay the same and all this kind of waffle, okay? So, our grant aid has flatlined wage costs. So what you have to watch for articles like this, which quite frustrates me, is they try and blame it on the wages. It's people earning too much money. So the people earning thousands of pounds, it's always the problem there. We need the funding. But what I want to talk about first is a petition which we're going to look at, all right, and sign, because we need to get this debated and more awareness of this. And what I want to do quickly, just go to Wikipedia, not the best source of information, but they got most of it on here. What we talk about, I say it's not just about staff levels and wages, all right? And come back to that in a second. Now, if you look about this, here's the Welsh National Library of Wales. It's in Aberystwyth, and there's a reason for that, because well, also Cardiff Central Library, where most people live, that was closed down as well. All that's been moved up there. But the reason why it's in Aberystwyth, if you go back to the original foundation, some of the people who donated, and I want to say donated here, this is not a government project, okay? Like Sir John Williams, he had, I think it was £20,000, and he had a load of books on the condition that it was in Aberystwyth, okay? Now, one of the things which seems to be forgotten is his modern history being forgotten. But my grandfather was a coal miner from the Welsh Valleys, and his father before him, okay? And what gets forgotten with the University of Wales and the Library of Wales is that it kind of touches on it here, that funds for both the National Library and the National Museum were contributed by the subscriptions of the working classes, which was unusual in the establishment of such institutions. In a prefatory note to a list of subscribers to the Building Fund 1924, so it's not even 100 years ago, okay, already being forgotten, the first librarian, John Ballinger, estimates that there are almost 110,000 contributors. This is not government set up. This was done by the people, and it's going to have to be us, the people, to save this library and stop it getting closed. Same with the National Museum, which has run down to be little more than an art gallery these days. Same with the Welsh universities. Now, what this does not mention, it was far more extensive than that, the funding and the way these institutions were put in place. In the valleys, I know in Cardiff they did things as well. In other areas, the working class raised money so that their children have a chance of an education and to have a better life than they had themselves. In the valleys where my family comes from, the saying was, these institutions were built by the miners' pennies. And at the end of a shift, they would be asked to contribute a penny a week from their wages. And these people are often living on the breadline. And this is 100 years ago, all right? So it's not like us giving a penny. I know, like us giving, what would it be, I suppose? I don't know, £50 a week or something like that. That's a wild guess. All right, so this is a national institution. Now, we'll get on to the more frightening thing about the rumours that are going around at the moment is that much of what is currently held in the National Library of Wales is planned to be moved to the British Museum or British Library in London, to leave Wales completely. And we will be back exactly where we were 100 years ago, where these things don't exist in Wales, and the cultural, intellectual wealth will be taken and will be gone. And it's outrageous because as well as the funding for actually building these things and getting them set up, being largely through donations of working class people and people throughout Wales, the contents have also been donated. And we've got the British Museum, which is famous for looting stuff from all around the world and rich people buying and taking it, you know, your Flinders of the world and all these people. The Welsh Museum and Library was not done on that basis. You had people from the very beginning who have donated private collections. One of the things you find in Britain's hidden history, which you have to look more and more at, is that all the collections and all the British records were attempted to be destroyed. You can go right back to medieval times where you had like church nutters like Scholasticus, proud of burning hundreds of books. When Welsh princes were captured and taken to the Tower of London, they would often ask for their collections of books to be sent with them so they'd have something to read and while away the time in the years they could spend there. Those were destroyed and kept. So the only records that were maintained in secrecy were often in private collections in the great houses around Wales. Now, many of these great houses, so we talked about the working class, now the upper class, now the gentry, many of those collections and donations of books, artifacts, old maps, lots of these sort of things were donated to be in a Welsh collection, all right? Not to be part of just some shared British Museum type thing or something like that, okay? That's not the idea. So look at some of the people involved here. There's one of the people we need to get on top of. I've got no party allegiances to anyone, all right? Not a member of any party or anything. Well, this is Mr. Wales, Mr. Campaigner. He's been, we need to contact him. Okay, and what I also show here, there's another article in the Cambrian News where devastating staff cuts is what they're talking about. This, I'm warning now, the staff cuts are the very, very thinnest end of what threatens to be a very, very fat, large wedge, okay? The funding has to be put back in. It's the people's money and the people who pay the taxes and people who pay all these things in Wales to have this service in Wales, okay? This is extremely important. So very rare we campaign on anything, but this is the history and the treasures of the country are held in there. All right, so here's this petition that was brought to my attention. It needs at least 10,000 signatures for it to be discussed. And I will tell you now, when it was we need far more than that. Far, far, far more than that. The last petitions that were discussed over just before Christmas were about the new Welsh syllabus. There was, I think, 8,000 petitions pushing for Welsh history to be on the Welsh syllabus in Welsh schools, which you would think is kind of common sense. And that was knocked down for all sorts of weird political reasons, which you want to have a look at. It's bizarre. Welsh awareness is awareness of sort of their Welsh involvement in slavery and things like that. They are now going to be compulsory, all right? They will be part of your children's curriculum. But Welsh history itself will not be. All right, so it's an absolute disgrace. And we're going to have to fight here, okay? Well done, Sue Jones-Davis. I don't know who you are, but well done. And we're talking here about 30 jobs being cut and services seriously curtailed. If you deal with the National Library of Wales, you'll know the service is already very, very stretched, okay? I'll just read this, actually, while we're here. Oh, I can't read it. Anyway, if you read on, it says, you've got the fundamental human values and rights to access your culture, your history, the treasures of the nation. And this is just an absolute gelding of Britain's and Wales's history if this goes on. So please, create a fuss, write a letter to your MP, not just your local Senedd person, them as well, and your MP, all right? Find out who it is, sign the petition, and share this video. We have to let people know that once again, our history, heritage and culture is being stolen from us in broad daylight, and we have to do something. All right, so till the next time, Heddwch.